Well, the provincial government is courting AI data centers, which could be a huge draw on our energy system. At the same time, our population is growing. So what can Alberta do to prepare for the energy needs of the future? For more insight, we welcome Martin Boucher, head of the Community Energy Innovation Center at Norquest College. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Your time.
Happy to be here.
So let's talk about growth here. How much will Alberta's energy need grow coming up shortly here?
Yeah, really in the last 5 years, I think the whole conversation shifted in terms of a sort of a zero-sum way of thinking about the energy system to kind of an all-hands-on deck. So it's quite significant, particularly with data centers and the energy draw that they have.
Yeah, in the conversation now. So a fossil fuel hub traditionally, how great is the need to now diversify?
Yeah, I think that's really critical. So I think it's an all-hands-on-deck situation where we have renewables, energy efficiency, nuclear, all sort of coming to bear to sort of move us in that direction.
Now, the province has changed the rules, started no-go zones for wind and solar. How has that affected, renewables at this point?
Frankly, I think it took some steam out of the sector. That's what I hear from the sector.
Yeah.
However, I think as I said, we're growing quite a bit in terms of that demand. Also, we have a really fantastic sort of solar resource and wind resource, and we have low penetration. Right now, renewables is only about 1/5 of our generation, so there's lots of opportunity to grow. So I think I'm optimistic we'll get back to that, but it certainly did take some steam out of the sector.
But is it going to need some sort of oversight change to say, hey, we got to open up all options here and maybe roll back some of these no-go zones?
I think we'll have to. Yeah, I think we'll have to get to a point where we're considering all these sort of diverse options.
Okay,
yeah.
And now that takes us to nuclear energy, which is a sort of polarizing topic. But what is the future of nuclear in Alberta?
Sure, it's becoming less polarized.
Okay.
I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic about nuclear. We have a small nuclear reactor, so that's where the industry is going to sort of scale down. We haven't had nuclear since the 90s in Canada, but we have our first SMR going in Ontario. So from Alberta's perspective, we have a really wonderful opportunity to sort of learn for what's happening in Ontario and kind of take those lessons and figure out what makes sense for Alberta. But it's a long-term play. This isn't like a tomorrow thing.
Yeah.
This is like a 10 to 15 years in the horizon.
Now, that's my next question. How quickly do some of these policy decisions or some of this planning work need to happen to make sure we're not in a jeopardizing position with our power grid?
Yeah, no, it's a bit of an. I think the SO right now is with the data centers. That's the sort of the big draw right now. They have rules already around like projects that come in. They have to have their own generation, so they're not adding to the grid. So there's like some short-term, things that we need to do, and then there's some long-term kind of planning at the same time.
Now, you said it a couple times. You remain optimistic about the opportunities here in Alberta. Why is that?
Yeah, I think we have really fantastic resources. This sounds a bit cheesy. I think we have a really good sort of business innovation sort of thing. And I think what calls for us to move forward is that sort of business savvy, that innovative spirit that we have here in Alberta. And I think that's where I think some of my optimism comes from.
Does that fight against the traditional fossil fuels only sort of attitude in the province?
No, I think like when I've engaged in energy, I think there's much more of an appetite. I don't think it's like my sense. This is where I might be annoyingly optimistic. I think it's less polarizing than people think. I think there's also just a real need. We're actually going to sort of move forward with like data centers and EV and AI. We kind of need an all hands on deck situation, so that it requires a lot of folks to sort of come to the table and kind of sort this out.
Optimism is never annoying. We appreciate the insight. Thank you so much for providing some of that for us today. Optimism always on this show. The Community Energy Innovation Center also helps to connect industry, communities, and governments on these topics. You can find out more at norquest.ca.